the Des Moines City Council to order, and Bob, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody's here except Councilmember Pennington. I'll move to excuse him. Oh, there he is. Okay. Everybody's here. Any correspondence?
No, Your Honor.
Well, there was actually, I think,
yes, but it's related to the public hearing.
No, actually, there's a nice letter from the Yup Fund.
I have not seen that. So there's a nice letter from the Yup Fund.
I think I passed that way before. So, anyhow. We're at that point in the meeting where we take comments from the public. There's a public hearing on the sidewalk vacation later. So this is just for general comments right now. And the first person up is Don Macero from the Yacht Club.
Good evening. That nice letter from the Yacht Club I gave to the clerk, and it's just a thank you letter for all of you. I personally came to just take a couple minutes, thank the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Pennington for showing, and it was a great, a very successful South End opening. We had a considerable amount of foot traffic from the community, which was when I first came to you here about 3 months ago. That was our goal. And I think that we succeeded. This next following year, we will start right in January, and we'll be back talking to you about further participation with us. And I think we can continue to make it a great community event. So thank you very much for the recognition that you gave us, and I just wanted to stop past and thank you formally.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to speak on a topic other than the street vacation? Okay, seeing none, board, committee reports, council member comments, starting with Vic.
We've not had any committee meetings, but did attend the Yacht Club event. It was a very nice event. A lot of members from the community brought the community together. I hope that that partnership continues and that the Yacht Club continues to host those. It brings me back a number of years ago when the Yacht Club was very involved with the whole Waterland Festival. So it was really nice to see that. Thank you.
I have no report.
Okay, Matt?
Tonight was a meeting of the Finance and Economic Development Committee. Highlights of that meeting pretty much involved a look at the city's financials. Kind of goes with the finance and economic development. We looked at our nuisance ordinance and how it applied, and how our the staff's work has gone with in terms of focusing on nuisance properties this year. I believe they have the numbers 9 properties have been mitigated or remediated, and there are several. Well, the list is getting shorter, but of the remaining ones on the list, several are in work. There's always a challenge with properties that are where people aren't living, and what we have learned as a city is sometimes they were property that where the owner has passed on, and the person who is the heir of the property isn't either, sometimes they're not even necessarily aware, or they're aware and they're not local, and so it takes a lot of work to, on the staff's part to get a hold of these folks and find a solution. So I want to commend the staff for their work there. 9 properties this year has been really a successful run. Then we did review our junk vehicle code. We have had some complaints, and we took a look at those complaints and how they compare to the code. And I think again the staff is doing a good job at figuring out what is the right thing to address. And finally, we had the rest of the items we have brought forward to the July 9th meeting. So that concludes my remarks.
And Melissa?
Mayor Kaplan asked that I bring this forward to the full council. I have been serving as the PIC committee, or the PIC appointee to the Sound City Association, and finding with some work and family constraints that I'm facing, I'm missing more of those meetings than I'm making. Jeanette Burge had been our alternate to that committee, and so I've just asked Dave that I wanted to announce to any of you, so you've got time to think about it. If anyone has the capacity or desire to be involved as the PIC representative for the city of Des Moines, it is a great committee. You learn so much there about what's going on in the legislature, what's going on locally with the county. Great networking opportunity. It's very interesting to meet your fellow council members and find out what it is that's going on in the cities. They meet primarily, I'd say 90% of the time, at the Renton City Hall on the second Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock at night. I'm finding with some corporate restructuring that we're doing, I tend to be at alternate meetings every second Wednesday night of the month. So I wanted to put that out there, and then if anyone was interested, if they could let Mayor Dave know so he can consider that reappointment. And then secondly, anyone who's got kids in the Highline School District has probably gotten about 3 robocalls this week regarding the Highline School District's protest leave of work that I don't want to call it a walkout because that sounds so negative, because I fully support the Highline School District's teachers who are leaving the classroom on May 21st as a sign of protest against the legislature's inability, I don't know if it's unwillingness, but inability to fund public education. It really struck home for me. We have an award-winning elementary school teacher at North Hill, our music teacher. She's won Educator of the Year awards, both through the Highline Foundation, through Washington Education Association, every PTA award you can think of. And she posted on social media, she's at the top of the teacher pay scale at the age of 42. I will not make more money in my profession ever. Our state has not given teachers a cost of living adjustment in several years. The math, I am taking a pay cut every year unless the state fulfills the voter-approved COLAs. She hates messing with working family schedules by doing a walkout. But why does the state require teachers to mess with people's lives in order for them to be heard? The legislature needs to do what has already been approved by the voters. So I'd like to thank the City of Des Moines Park and Recs Department for quickly coming together and organizing. They're hosting a day camp. You can find more information on the City of Des Moines website. So if you are a working family, you need to quickly find accommodations for your kids. The City of Des Moines Park and Recs Department is facilitating that. That ends my report.
Jeremy?
To dovetail with that, the makeup day will be May 26th. It was supposed to be a day off for snow makeup, but it'll be a makeup day for the children. It'll be full school as normal. I attended the Senior Services Advisory Committee this afternoon at the Senior Center, with the Activity Center. A lot of good conversation. We're still waiting for an adoption of which contractor, which program is going to take on the Take Back Your Meds program, which when that happens, both Safeway pharmacies, both Bartels, and there was one other one that will be taking back the meds. So we'll have it pretty much covered from north to south. Also, yesterday was the first of the Coffee with the Vets St. Vincent de Paul. Josh was there, and they had 13 vets spanning the last 4 wars that we were in. So that was pretty incredible. They meet the second Wednesday of every month at 10:30, just for coffee and chatting, and hopefully it'll roll into lunch up at the activity center. That concludes my report.
First, I'd like to announce the appointment of Councilmember Pennington to the Finance and Economic Development Committee, a slot that was made vacant with Councilmember Burge's resignation. And there's that. The second thing is yesterday was the monthly meeting of Soundside Alliance. Conversation yesterday talked about some of the items that came out of the strategic planning retreat that we had last month, including the possibility of creating an EB5 center for the Soundside Alliance jurisdictions. There were economic development updates, and we talked about essentially what amounts to the second annual Soundside event to bring people to our area to show what we have from a standpoint of bringing their businesses, wanting to encourage them to bring their businesses to the cities that belong to Soundside. And the last thing I'm going to mention, reason we're kind of somber here is we just got some information just prior to the council meeting that was kind of disturbing. And I'm not going to go into any details. I'm just going to say that I encourage you to listen to your kids and what they say and be supportive of them and hear them out, whatever it is. And I think you'll get a better sense of it when the news hits later. So, with that, administration report, Tony.
Your Honor, I have 2 items. First, I'd like Dan Brewer to come up and give you an update on the theft of wire that we've been experiencing at Steve Jenwood Park and the steps that we've been taking to stop it from happening. Dan?
Good evening, Council.
Props.
Yeah. Good evening, Council. Dan Brewer, Planning, Building, Public Works Director. We've had a couple of incidents at Steve Jenwood Park. The first was in last November. We had another theft in January. We had 8,200 feet of number 1 wire stolen. That's well over a mile of this stuff. And we had just under 2,000 feet of this green ground wire that was taken out of the park. So when typically thieves will strip the shielding off of this. They can run it through a machine to do that, or they'll burn it. Burn the stuff off of here. Reveals about 2,240 pounds of copper, salvage price at around $270 a pound. They were able to get perhaps upwards of $6,000. The problem is our repair bill just for our contractor to fix the damage was $43,000. And
I will say we do have insurance for that. But we do have a $25,000 deductible.
Well, and
unfortunately, this is 2 incidences that are treated differently, so the deductible is applied to each one individually.
Yeah, so we'll get about $2,000 covered on the insurance.
And our premium will go up.
So,
Yeah. Actually, no, it won't.
So here's some pictures of the damage that what they did back in November. This has been ongoing for a number of years, and one of the things several years ago that Public Works agency started to do was we would weld the, where's the laser here? Oh well. We'll weld the lids to the junction boxes closed so they couldn't just pop the lids off. Well, pretty soon they figured out they could just dig up the junction box and roll it out of the ground. And so that's what they did here. They pulled back the pavers and just pulled the junction box completely out of the ground. And the larger box on the right, basically that lid probably weighs 300 or 400 pounds, so there's a couple of guys, they'll just roll the lid over to access the larger vaults. So anyway, by now that we've got this repaired, and one of the things that we're doing on the smaller boxes is we're encapsulating the whole box in a much larger piece of concrete to prevent them from kind of lifting the box or rolling that out. That's several thousand pounds of concrete there. You know, a couple of years ago, there has been some updates to the legislation regarding the salvage of copper, and it's not just wiring, it's copper plumbing that's taken out of homes, or aluminum, things like that. So I'm not going to read all of these things, but there's a lot of regulations now that the metal scrappers have to kind of follow. The most important one that seems to be having a good effect is if you show up, you can only get $30 cash. The rest of it has to be mailed to a mailing address that's on the photo ID that you provide. No P.O. boxes, and they also have to get a description of a vehicle, the license number. You know, it's kind of funny that, you know, they have to sign a declaration that the materials aren't stolen. I mean, it's kind of a little bit ironic to me, but anyway, the other thing is that there's a kind of a no-buy list program that's maintained by WASPIC. They people that are convicted of these crimes, the scrap metal businesses cannot purchase metal from anybody here that's convicted of those kind of crimes, and that list is maintained. Most importantly, prior to this recent update of the legislation, the stuff that's underlined is really key for us, is that it's based on the cost of the damage to the owner's property. It used to be based on the value of the material that was stolen. So in this case, it would have been $6,000. Well, now the penalties are based on the damage that's done to facilities. So it's theft in the first degree. It's a Class B felony. So is this effective? Well, you know, Sound Transit had a case a number of years ago where the theft of about 70,000 pounds of copper. Those individuals were caught and recently sentenced to 12 years in prison and ordered to pay $1.3 million in restitution. Whether they'll actually get that or not is another question. King 5 just recently had a report, I don't know, many of you may have seen that, where they kind of went undercover and went around to some of the metal recycling places, and 2 of the 3 followed the new law, and one of them, they were able to go in and get all of the salvage value in cash, so they kind of talked with that particular business about the law and things like that. So I talked with a few of the folks in the building community. You know, the Dennis Smith, he's with Absher Construction. He's working on the Artemis project. They had some copper theft earlier this year, about $10,000 in damage. Landmark Homes and Powell Homes, they've had problems in the past, but more recently they've reported that it hasn't been as bad as it has been. So maybe some of the legislation is helping a little bit there. You know, the prevention, what can we do to prevent some of this stuff? You know, we're working closely with other public works agencies. Auburn's kind of led the way in getting some of this legislation passed a couple of years ago. City of Renton, they're actually offering a $1,000 reward to information that leads to the arrest of anybody that's stolen copper. City of Federal Way has some pretty innovative ideas, which we're going to implement along with them, and this is the other security measures, and I'm not going to talk about what those are publicly. The other thing is this stoptheftalert.com. It's a site that agencies like us can go to. When we have a theft, we can report, we had X amount of copper stolen, here's what it looks like, and those reports actually go out to the scrapping businesses, and they've actually had some success recently catching thieves because of this report. the biggest thing I'd like to say is, if the public, if you see people or if you see something suspicious going on, whether it's on city property or along the side of the road, or somebody breaking into a house that's under construction, call 911. The amount of damage that's done to the public infrastructure or to our building community is significant. And it's a real, some of these, there's kind of two groups of people there that are doing this. Some are very sophisticated. They know how to take this stuff out somewhat safely. There's another group that isn't as sophisticated, and there's a lot of examples where people that are stealing this stuff, it kills them as they're doing it. So make sure to, if you see something suspicious, call 911. It's something that would really help. So.
Thank you. Any questions?
The program where you have to wait 10 days and the check that's $30 cash, is that also implemented in Idaho and Oregon, or is it worth a road trip to drive into Post Falls and sell your scrap metal there?
Gosh, that's a really good question. Let me look into that.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item is a presentation by our friends at King County Water District 54 regarding their elevated reservoir storage system. They had an evaluation on it recently, so I'll turn it over to District 54.
Hi, I'm Eric Clark. I'm with the Water District. I brought my engineer who did the Warren Perkins with Grant Osborne, whose company did the report.
Thanks, Eric.
I like my job.
We were contracted last fall to do a evaluation of the reservoir. It started off just what are we going to do? What's it going to cost to paint it? And we actually went inside the reservoir on a little rubber raft and floated around, and there's a fair amount of work that needs to be done. And it sort of rolled into what else needs to happen up there. And when you paint a reservoir on the inside, you typically don't just paint it. You have to do some metal work in addition to that. And there's a fair amount of metal work that needs to be done. And the other issue is that it does not meet current seismic code. Kind of like painting your house. You paint your house, you don't have to structurally repair it, but if you're going for a building permit, you do. So we are faced with this issue now at the district of, do we simply do some metal work and repair it and paint it, or do we do the complete seismic upgrade, which is another $500,000? So it's not an insignificant project. We're looking at probably upwards of $1 million in total to do the entire project. The district's been grappling with that cost since we gave them the report in late January. So that's my sort of update on the reservoir itself. I'm happy to answer any questions or one of the issues is that we could take the reservoir down and build storage on site, small amount of storage on site, because if we take the reservoir down, we don't have enough storage, and we'd have to build something. That's actually a little bit cheaper, but the elevated tank is a bit iconic, and to take it down, I think might be some people that would be not happy about that. So that's another consideration.
Does that affect? Would that affect the water pressure if you had to take the tank down?
No. Currently, the district did some work about a year ago, I guess, at the booster station. I don't know, for those of you that don't know the system, basically the yard is right over here. There's 3 wells that pump up to a low reservoir. It's a big, fat, low concrete reservoir. And from there, the water is pumped at an on-site booster station up to the big steel tank. And then from there, it goes out into the system, and that tank provides the pressure. In preparation for the elevated tank being repaired about a year and a half ago, we did some plumbing work at the booster station so that the booster station and the low tank can provide all the pressure as necessary and as you see it today. In fact, we could even jack the pressure up a little bit if we needed to. But we do have a little deficiency in storage. And it's emergency storage. It wouldn't affect us on a day-to-day basis. So that's what we're grappling with right now is how do we proceed, what path do we want to proceed down? And there's some dollars and some at stake.
To tear the elevated reservoir down, it would change the dynamics of how the communities delivered water. It would be all on pump. Right now, we pump it to the elevated reservoir in order to gravity feed it. As the water gets further down the hill, the pressure increases. And if we took that down, we'd have pumps running 24/7 essentially.
But I don't think the customer would notice any difference at the tap in terms of pressure.
Council, any questions?
Quite a few of these pictures indicate that there's a lot of corrosion, cracking, and you know, I was formerly associated with the water district, that little bit of information. Is there water in the tank now?
Yeah.
Okay, and as I recall reading in here, some of the sphere, the wall thickness was thin enough that you couldn't weld. So, is there a concern with the overall thickness of the wall and the safety of that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's some pitting and corrosion that's gone on that has, eaten into the metal a little bit, but I don't think it's significant enough that it's going to start, being a pincushion, with a water shower coming out of it. We're not 100% sure what the steel thickness is at the top. Could be a little bit. We'll be able to weld it, but it might be a little bit challenging.
Okay. Somebody else has a question. Go ahead, Mark.
Seismically, the reservoir, seismically, it's the cone below the ball is really where it needs work, which would entail significant welding.
That and the foundation itself.
On the foundation.
So is it your intent then to do the seismic upgrades?
Right now, we haven't determined whether to do, as Warren said, we essentially have two options. One is to rehabilitate it, or to tear it down and add an additional 100 gallons of storage.
100,000.
100,000 gallons, I'm sorry. We're talking multiple zeros in water. Anyway, so that's really where we're haven't come to a decision yet.
Okay. So regardless, you're talking between $500,000 and $1.2 million.
Yeah, we're probably talking 1.2 to rehabilitate it, maybe just under $1 million to tear it down and put another concrete reservoir
On site.
right in its spot. Yeah.
And by doing that, you'll still be able to meet your reserve capacities and fire flows and those types of things. Your system pressures will be appropriate for the sprinkler systems and.
Yeah, there will be no drop in pressure. Like I said, we could actually boost it a little bit if we needed to.
Okay.
Matt?
So what's the window for the decision?
Oh, we're talking probably, I'm going to say July, mid-July.
The decision would be made?
Yeah.
What would be the impact to those on the system today while the construction, whatever the choice was?
We could just run water out of the lower reservoir and feed it through the community just on the pressure thing. As I had mentioned earlier, if we tore it down, we'd always be on pressure. The work that Warren was talking about that we did a year and a half ago allows us to do that while we rehabilitate that reservoir. So it really would have no impact other than the construction out next door.
And the other thing is we have an emergency intertie with Highline. So if there was an emergency, huge fire or something like that, God forbid, that we would be able to get water from Highline. We could get it today if there was an emergency today. So that sort of our safety net, if you will, during the construction.
And that opens automatically. There's no valve turning. It would just turn on automatically. Once the pressure in the system drops, say 8 pounds, that valve would automatically open.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to this, Was there any other scheduled work that you had for this year that might be affected by the ability, the financial impact of choosing either of the alternatives? that you have?
Actually, no, we don't, not this year. We do have some mains we'd like to replace, but this is kind of our primary capital improvement project. I don't think, the reservoir that elevated reservoir was built in 1969. I don't think it's ever been recoated on the inside. Every 3 to 5 years, we send divers in there to vacuum all the sediment up and whatnot, which is pretty common in the industry. So, but it needs recoating. It's an unusual tank for this part of the country. So the construction of it is probably a lot of the contractors aren't familiar with the type of construction or the golf ball on a tee, so to speak.
Access is a little bit challenging.
The ratepayers are, what, about 970, somewhere there, in terms of numbers of ratepayers? I don't recall.
Patty, you probably
We have 756 meters, probably serving about 5,000 people.
So what do you anticipate the financial impact to at least the Marina District, Water District 54 ratepayers to be?
Well, we just raised rates last year, so we won't consider raising rates until next year. What the financial impact on us is just the numbers that you're seeing in the report, just the 1.2 mil.
And you'll break that out across the 700.
Yeah, the other thing too is the lower reservoir in 4 years will be paid off. So there's virtually $100,000 a year that we would put into our pocket, which we'd like to get this project done certainly before 4 years. But just if you're worried about rates or something like that, it's just a balancing act and cash flow.
I think I'd edit what you said about $100,000 into your pocket, $100,000 into the ground doing other infrastructure things.
So we're a nonprofit, so yeah, it all goes back into itself.
Any other questions, council? Okay, well, we appreciate the update on that.
Yeah,
so.
thank you. And that's our report.
Okay. Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
Item 1, approval of minutes. Item 2, approval of vouchers. Item 3, farmers market 10th season proclamation. Item 4, Highline Music for Life proclamation. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Councilmember Nutting, second by Councilmember Musser. Is there any item Councilmember wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm going to open the public hearing for SV, presumably standing for Street Vacation 2015-01, vacation public right-of-way within the city of Des Moines, on this portion of west right-of-way on 7th Avenue South, and portion of the north right-of-way of South 226. Dan Brewer.
Good evening, Council. Again, I'm Dan Brewer, Planning, Building, Public Works Director. I'm here tonight to talk about draft ordinance 15-065, which proposes to vacate a portion of the west right-of-way of 7th Avenue South and a portion of the north right-of-way of South 226th Street. Just want to give a quick overview of kind of a standard street vacation process. Our street vacation or right-of-way vacation process is codified in Chapter 12.10 of the Des Moines Municipal Code and kind of mirrors the regulations in Chapter 3579 RCW. Both of these are provided as in your council packet as attachment 5 and 6 for reference if you need. Typically, we'll get a application petition filed with the department that comes with a non-refundable fee. The petition has to be signed by 2/3 of the property owners abutting the right-of-way that's to be vacated. Once we have that, we'll do some initial research We'll send out notices to all of our utilities, all the city departments, and South King Fire and Rescue, asking for any comments and feedback. Oftentimes, if there's pre-existing utilities, our utility providers will request easements. And kind of once all of that is established, then we'll have a resolution by the council setting a date for a public hearing. So as it relates to this particular process, we received a petition for a right-of-way vacation from the Adriana Senior Developments. They are the only property owner abutting the right-of-way proposed to be vacated. We did get responses from utilities where easements were requested, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. We set this public hearing date by Resolution 1293, and that's also included in your packet for reference if you need. The petition from Adriana is attachment 2 in your packet. We did receive some comments. Two of those are in the council packet as attachment 10. We received another comment today, which has been distributed to you, and you have that. So this is the area that's proposed in the right-of-way vacation, the hatched area. The Adriana project encompasses the parcels that are shown immediately to the left and north of that on 226th. Just wanted to give a little bit of a description about the Adriana project. It's affordable housing for a senior citizen. The current proposal is 119 units with a little over 2,000 square feet of commercial and retail space. Does qualify for a 10-foot height bonus that's under current zoning in our Marina District zoning. The building height to be 55 feet. There are some roof appurtenances that are above that, which are allowed by code, the elevator shaft, the stair tower, and some mechanical HVAC equipment and screening. The project's providing 60 parking spaces. Kind of where the project is at right now, all the environmental review process is complete. SEPA was issued last November. We did get a few comments. I think we had 9 comments on the SEPA decision. No appeals were filed on that. The project's currently in design review. That process is nearly complete, and the building permit applications have been submitted. This is kind of a elevation view at the top of kind of what it would look like from 7th Avenue, and the bottom is kind of what the building would generally look like from 226th Street. So the right-of-way vacation is proposed for limited purpose. Adriana they're requesting the right-of-way vacation in order to meet their floor area ratio requirements. So the pictures that I've shown here are kind of examples of what a floor area ratio is. It kind of is intended to provide modulation or variation in the building design. All of these examples have a floor area ratio of 3.2. So if Adriana owns the land that's under the sidewalk, the calculated FAR, floor area ratio, would allow for more units or larger units and makes the project more financially feasible. One thing I'd want to point out about this particular project, it does have some interesting financing limitations. Because it's affordable housing for senior citizens, the rental rates are capped, and that's important to kind of keep in mind as we move forward. I want to talk a little bit about the classification of right-of-way. It's one of the processes we go through as we're considering a right-of-way vacation. We have 3 different classes, and the purpose for this is in how we determine fees for compensation. So this particular right-of-way is Class A right-of-way, meaning that we've had the right-of-way for more than 25 years. We've spent transportation resources on the sidewalk and on the infrastructure that's there. There's other classes, but this fits into Class A. The compensation, this is covered in Des Moines Municipal Code 12.10.070. Compensation, full compensation is required for the vacation of Class A right-of-way. And there's a couple of different ways we can determine value. You can do a full appraisal. The code allows us to just go off of King County assessments, or you can do some kind of informal process. So just looking at the assessed value and the square footage of the combined parcels, it would be about $17.50 a square foot. Typically, when you have comparable sales, you typically see property values above that, obviously. We looked at some comparable sales, and some of that work is included in Attachment 8 to your council packet. And in discussions and some negotiations with the folks from Adriana, we kind of honed in on a established value of $21.25 a square foot. And based on the amount of right-of-way being vacated, the compensation would be just over $100,000. So the manner of compensation, or the manner of payment for this $105,000, is any revenues that we receive have to be dedicated to the acquisition or improvement, development, or related maintenance of transportation capital projects. So if we receive cash, these would typically be deposited into our transportation CIP fund and go to improving roads or making other transportation capital projects. In this particular case, one of the things that's included in the draft ordinance is an alternative that's for your consideration. The idea is that rather than cash, the applicant could provide in-kind services by constructing or providing transportation capital projects, such as, maybe they do some sidewalk, or maybe they help us with a municipal parking area. There's a variety of things that they could do. In my mind, that meets the intent of our code and the RCW, and we can discuss that, but that is included in the draft ordinance. I want to point that out. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the easement. The public and our utilities will continue to need access to this vacated area. There's been a little bit of confusion or some misunderstandings about kind of what's going on with the process, and I want to talk the next few slides about that. So we're allowed, as we vacate right-of-way, to maintain an easement for a variety of reasons, public use and access and utilities and things like that. And one of the conditions of this vacation is that we retain an exclusive easement for public use and access, for our utilities, for sidewalk, and anything that we typically do today, that we continue to be able to do that as we maintain and operate those facilities. We will retain the right to, because it's an exclusive easement, retain the right to grant other easements to our utilities to do work in that area, and kind of have control over what happens to the sidewalk that's in this area. And they'll do that in conformance with our current franchise agreements. I want to talk a little bit about the nature of public right-of-way. A lot of people think that we actually own public right-of-way, and as a general rule, that's just not the case. Right-of-way is an easement for public travel. We don't own the property in fee title of the land underlying the right-of-way. The property owner owns the land. There are some exceptions to that, and it kind of gets a little bit complicated, but those exceptions don't apply in this case. So to show you what I mean here by that, what you see is everything that's shaded in blue on the map is our right-of-way easement that we have for 7th and 226th and the alley behind there. And you see a parcel line that I've kind of highlighted in black here. The property owner is paying property tax on everything that's kind of to the up and left of that parcel line. They don't pay property tax on where our right-of-way easement. If I could have drawn a dashed line kind of down the middle you often hear when we vacate right-of-way, we give half to each. It's kind of the idea of their property line is down the middle, so when we vacate it, that's kind of where that concept comes from. What's happening in this case is that the parcel line is going to move to there, but you'll notice that our easement area doesn't change. The sidewalk that we have will still be in an easement. The manner of that easement will look a little bit different. But it's an exclusive easement for the sidewalk and all of our utilities and our street lighting and furniture and our ADA ramps and all that stuff. It'll just be in an easement. So the parcel line will move out, and that's really all that the effect of this vacation will have. One of the things that I wanted to also point out is that we have several examples here that I've listed where we have city sidewalk and easements. And the one that's probably closest to this is on Marine View Drive, the west side, from 223rd to 225th, so in front of the Des Moines Theater, the All-Star Sports Bar, and that whole area. All of that sidewalk is in an easement, just like what's being proposed here. And about half of the parking is also in an easement. Now, 216th near 11th, that sidewalk is also in an easement. We don't have right-of-way. It's an easement in the southeast corner of 216th and 20th by the post office. Those are some examples. We have others, but typically what happens is the transportation division builds a project, and we have to negotiate for right-of-way. Sometimes, for a variety of reasons, we can't quite close a deal with the property owner. We don't have enough money to purchase the encumbrance for that right-of-way. We come to an agreement on an easement. That's what's likely happened on all of these properties. I can tell you the post office property, we just don't condemn federal property very easily, so we were able to negotiate with them for an easement for that sidewalk, and it's kind of a small area. What's a little bit strange is, or unusual, is kind of taking right-of-way and putting it into a kind of a different easement, but it's not completely unheard of. City of Bellevue in 2005 passed an ordinance vacating portions of their 109th Avenue for just this very same reason. It's for their European Tower project, and it was done so that the developer could count the land under the right-of-way against their FAR calculations. There's been some discussions about maintenance, who's going to maintain the sidewalk under this kind of process. It'd be really irregular for the property owner to maintain this vacated area since we have this exclusive easement for public use, for public access, for our utilities. Transferring that would be inconsistent with how we deal with maintenance of all of these other sidewalks that are in easements. In the Bellevue example I mentioned, Bellevue continued to maintain the sidewalk and responsible for maintenance. In this case, that's what's also being proposed, is that because of the exclusive easement, we'll still maintain the sidewalk. All the utilities will still have access to the area and maintain that in accordance with our franchise agreements with the utilities. So I want to point to some of the conditions in the ordinance. These conditions are in a little bit more detail in Section 3 of the draft ordinance. It's on page 66 of your council packet. So we have the compensation that's identified, which is the $105,000. And there's also the alternative that I mentioned earlier that gives some flexibility in how the compensation is delivered to the city. The exclusive easement, that's on page 71. It's Exhibit C to the ordinance. That's a condition of the vacation, as well as the project having building permits in hand by the end of September. So kind of some conclusions and recommendations. The right-of-way vacation, facilitates an opportunity to increase economic development in the Marina District for new residential units. These units are independent living housing for seniors that are affordable. The project is kind of part of our Marina District redevelopment process. The vacation will have no impact on the size or the height of the building, none whatsoever. the vacation, it just simply provides an opportunity for the project to move forward because of some of the financing limitations that are on there because of those capped rental rates for seniors. Our public utilities will continue to need access, so we're as well as the public for access and use, so we'll have this exclusive easement. There's no impact to the public use of this area. Nothing on the ground changes. Nothing physically changes. There'll still be a sidewalk. Nothing changes on the street. And the city will continue to own and maintain that sidewalk. So based on the conditions of that, staff is recommending approving vacating the requested areas for the limited purpose that we've talked about tonight. So and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll take comments from the public. Speakers make their comments from the podium, and you will have 3 minutes. And the first person is Amy Lunsford.
I'll make sure I have this thing right. They go back. I will need some technical assistance. See, it wasn't my fault. First, I would like to say thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I really believe that the City of Des Moines has really come a long way since we first invested in downtown Des Moines. And really, the mindset in the past, I really believe, was more, let's keep everything the same. And I really believe that the City of Des Moines and downtown in particular was really affected negatively because of that. And I really think that as a result of the steps that have taken, height limit, for example, that the downtown's really going to prosper. And I know I'm excited to be a part of that. So with that, our project's called the Adriana Senior Apartments. And just really two of the benefits that we're bringing to downtown is increased revenue from seniors within the community. I've toured several of Village Concepts buildings for actually a couple of their buildings, and they're beautiful buildings, and the communities that they build are amazing. So these people are going to come down and join this amazing community and spend money down in downtown and shop. And secondly, they're good neighbors, and you know, they're here to be just neighbors in downtown Des Moines. So here's our site. It's literally right down smack dab in downtown. And up until this point, we have spent $500,000 getting to this point. So that's $500,000 of pre-development costs. And why do we invest in downtown Des Moines? Our first site we bought in 2006, almost a decade ago. And we loved it. We love the city. We love the marina. We love the people. You know, I mean, it's a great city. So that's why we came here, and we're committed to this project. And $500,000 is a lot of money. So with that, the building that we've designed, it's a $20 million building. We're building a really nice building that we really think is going to be a great addition to downtown. This is one of Village Concepts buildings that they built in Covington, which you can see the quality of the construction. It's a 121 unit, and you see next to it, those are the businesses that followed. Starbucks, Kohl's, a little boutique sushi place, and we're also bringing two commercial units, two little commercial units that are going to come be a part of our building. So they're going to be boutique shops that are going to be really nice, and I think just join in with the boutique shops that are already in downtown. So
it's a nice addition. A little bit about Village Concepts. We partnered with Village Concepts. We looked and really wanted to bring in a great operator, and they have a great reputation, and their mission and philosophy are right there, and they're really there to serve their residents. I've talked with their managers and everybody, just they're great people. So they hire well. So really believe that we're going to bring good people to join downtown. Some of the building amenities, just to talk about our building, we're going to have a rooftop deck on top, which is going to have literally world-class views of the sound. Fire pit, which is nice to enjoy some fires. Covered seating, those sound views, as well as we're going to have a courtyard right running through the middle, which I invite everybody, once it's built, to come take a look. And I'll end with this, and with this building, the sidewalks. We need the sidewalks for this to be developed. And I just really want to thank the city staff, because we really worked together to come up with a solution that made sense. And they worked tirelessly really with us, and we worked together. And we really think, and I think this is going to be a win-win for the city and for us. So it's a good solution, and we're, of course, on board. And I'll just end with saying that with our sidewalk, having the sidewalks, nothing is going to change. The building does not get higher, and it doesn't get bigger. Everything's staying the same. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dave Voss?
Yeah, I'll defer. We covered a lot of it.
Jim Langston?
I'm Jim Langston. I live at 600 South 220th here in Des Moines. I'm a fourth-generation person here in our city. I'm speaking against the development of the Adriana, as it's proposed at least. The plans at the Adriana Senior Apartments indicate that there will be 42 double bedroom apartments units and 93 single bedroom units, with a total of 135 units. If there were only one car per unit, which is highly unlikely, that would add up to 135 needed parking spaces. And if only half of the 135 had two cars, that would require 136 units of parking. The plans that the public have been shown indicate that there will be, by the developer, that they have only been required to provide 72 parking spaces. Our questions would be, where does the developer or the city council plan to put the other vehicles? Where and how it planned, does the plan show any room for janitors, for office staff, or for visitors to these units? The plan indicates the first floor will be 2 retail outlets. Where are the owners, their customers, and the commercial delivery vehicles supposed to park their vehicles? Where is the load and the unload area? Because many seniors require assistance sometimes that would require parking for those type of vehicles. Everyone sitting here knows that it would not be believable that no additional vehicle parking would be, indeed it would be disastrous if there weren't enough parking spaces for the rest of the citizens in our community. The water table in this area for properties to the west of this desired project already requires sump pumps that, because of the ground water level in that area. And the structure that is being built, if that condition worsens, who would be required, who would be responsible to pay for any additional problems for surrounding properties? And the western perimeter of this project is a driveway which extends approximately 1/2 block in from 226 north. Okay, will that driveway be extended to 225th from 226 to make a complete alley? And if so, who would be responsible for paying for that improvement as well? It has come to my attention that multiple variances have been granted to this development and considered, perhaps not all set in steel, but have been and are being considered for approval.
Mr. Langston, you need to wrap that.
Okay. I would request that the City Council take a serious look at this matter because the development of this sort, with so few parking spaces and so many possible vehicles, that this would have a great detrimental effect on the rest of our community. Thank you.
Terry DiMartino.
Hi. I just want to say I think I'm a really good citizen here, one of the best. And I can see why you want to bring such a large development to our community. But I am totally against this. I think the council approving this is I'm against any public assistance to any developer. According to the filings, this building would hold about 119 low-income senior units on 5 floors. The sidewalk vacation was offered by the city once it discovered the project did not meet the floor area ratio, which the city's already explained. So you want a benefit from the city for very little money. I was looking at your cost estimates on the sidewalk costs. And just comparing them to redoing my kitchen countertops, putting quarry in or granite, is $60 per square foot. You are getting a screaming deal at $20. I'm against that. The value of the sidewalk is greater than the simple real estate calculation proposed in that meeting packet, as it is an essential part of a completed sidewalk system for the downtown, having greater value as part of a whole than just the stretch of the sidewalk. The city has already granted you parking reductions, and I don't know why you did that, because it seems like parking's at a premium already. This project seems to go against our vision for the Marina District. You know, I'm up on 8. The 30,000 cars that use Marine View South on a daily basis that have a nice water view is going to be blocked by your $20 million building. And maybe it works out in Covington, but Covington doesn't have a nice water view and mountains and a beautiful marina and a yacht club. And where all these people are going to spend money, low income, I don't think they'll be going to Anthony's or Red Robin or Wally's, which are really the only nearby services. You really should look at putting this project on Pacific Highway South, where there's public transportation, where there's lots of emergency services, and grocery stores. We can't even get a grocery store in downtown Des Moines. You know, I'd be for this benefit if it was a grocery store, but not for a bunch of low-income seniors. We've already got a lot of low income in Des Moines. And as far as the city granting this, you know, it's interesting. The city of Des Moines is already in financial despair given a 2014 published state audit. So giving away our precious resources for private benefit is wrong. And in closing, you know, I'm disappointed the city freed this up to try to make this project work. And yesterday, the Highline Times published a letter from Dan Sherman, who's a former council person. He submitted this to the Waterland blog. They wouldn't publish it because the blog is facilitated by the city of Des Moines.
Please wrap up.
I will. And Mayor Kaplan made a remark on the recent interview against the building heights, and in his opinion, he said that Mr. Sherman is fighting for the current building code heights. You know, we know they're going to get 55 feet, but what he's fighting for is the willingness to give away our resources to the benefit of a developer who's going to reap all the benefits. It's not going to be the citizens or the businesses here. Oh, and then one last thing you brought up were the public utilities. In a recent email that the city manager got, CenturyLink opposes this too. And they're a huge utility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Couch?
Hi, I'm Larry Couch. I'm a citizen of Des Moines as well. Yeah, I think this is a good idea. I think that downtown Des Moines needs some good things to happen. My wife and I walk around the area on a regular basis, and it needs some progress. You know, I don't know if somebody's got a better plan, but this is a good plan. So I think that that's a beautiful building. You know, that really.
Worth the mountain.
Pardon me?
Sorry, no comments from the audience. You had your opportunity to speak.
He's looking right at me.
So what? Please.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed that the grocery store is left, and all the other things that a lot of vacancies. I think this is a good opportunity to bring about some growth. Yeah, we'd all like to have $4 million condos going in that place, I'm sure. But this is something that's happening, So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Mark Ryder?
Thank you. My name is Mark Ryder. I live at 28436 Redondo Beach Drive in Des Moines, and I'm a former resident of the Orchards, which is above downtown of the Marina District. I've been a resident of Des Moines for the last 10 years, and have been affiliated with the South Sound area for pretty much all of my lifetime in one way or another. I moor a boat in the Marina. I know Scott and Joe and many of the people, that are part of this great city. Yes, I believe that the downtown area does need, improvement and redevelopment. I just can't accept that the current proposal is the way to do it. I also work in Lower Queen Anne. I drive up Western Avenue every day, and it's basically a canyon of 6- and 7-story buildings that are built right out to the street, and that's fine for just conveying cars into through the area, but there really isn't any view. There isn't any aesthetics. It's very concerning. And if I were to say anything about this current proposal that's before the council, I'd start off by just saying things happen inch by inch or drip by drip. And a problem never starts out as a big problem. It starts out as a little problem. And it's a little problem that we choose to ignore. That if we ignore it long enough, eventually it grows into a big problem. And I don't want that to happen in the city of Des Moines. I would certainly be in favor of a good plan, a good idea. I just don't think that this one is it. And I don't think that the city is doing the right thing by vacating this property in order to just sort of make this thing go. Because as others have pointed out in their discussions, we've let this go little by little. We vacated, or we altered building height restrictions. We've altered parking, allowances. We're now talking about giving up, part of the street. And that street, if I looked at all those pictures, there were several parking spaces that would be gone forever, converted to sidewalks. And I don't think that delivers what we need in Des Moines. Somebody suggested an idea, we used to have a QFC in downtown Des Moines. We don't have that anymore. And in fact, we have a big building that's up for lease that anybody can, utilize. Nobody sees economic benefit of doing that. Maybe a better project would be, and I tried to be fair to you, shut myself up here, but maybe a better idea would be to develop that property with a building of even larger size that allows you to get the value per square foot that you're looking to get. And, and that would help solve some of the problems in Des Moines that we see today, and allow for right-sized development.
Time to wrap up, please.
Allow for right-sized development in our community that meets the needs of the people and maintains the aesthetics and the view. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who didn't get a chance to sign up who wishes to speak? Your name and address for the record, sir?
My name is Ken Lowry. My wife and I live at 620 South 227th here in Des Moines, and that's one block removed from this particular project.
Did you just say Mallory, sir?
M-O-W-R-Y, yeah. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions, and the questions nag at me maybe more than the comments, but the speakers who were up here before, I can sympathize with and support in arguments against this project, or at least as it's proposed with the vacating of the sidewalk. I have a fundamental question, though, and my fundamental question is, why is this coming up now? Where was this issue when this project was first established? Maybe it was here, and if I say something that's incorrect or the timeline is not right, please correct me. But I'm wondering now, here in May, I submitted comments back in December on the original project, at least I think it was the original project, and this issue was not brought up then. I even asked in my questions, were there any other issues to be brought forward? I didn't see any until this particular one. Nonetheless, I'm still not perhaps totally clear as to why this is needed, why this project can't fit within the current constraints that we have today. And the next concern is what's next. First it was the height, and then it was the parking, and now it's the vacating of the sidewalks. And I don't know what's coming next. What issues? And so my question is, are there any more issues that are going to be coming up? Is relative to the commercial units, my question there would be, what type of commercial units? Are there restrictions on the units that are going to go into that property? I have no clue, but I also don't know what they'll be. We live in the Beachstone condos, which are on 227th, and the commercial unit there is an attorney's office, a couple of attorney's offices there. That's fine. I have no clue what's going to go in this particular project. And the gentleman who talked about the QFC property and the folks who talked about, or maybe the representative from Adriana respectively said or talked about shopping in Des Moines. Shopping in Des Moines, I went and got a haircut yesterday over at Marlene's, and that whole place looks like a bombed out shelter. Maybe there's one more business, and there's about 4 of them along there that are totally vacant. The QFC lot is totally vacant. So the idea that this is going to stimulate more economic growth within the city of Des Moines, I just can't see where that's going to happen. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But so anyway, those are the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who didn't get a chance to sign up who wishes to speak? Second call. Is there anybody else?
I'd like to. My name is Mark Peterson. I live on 820 South 226. And I want to just reiterate what several people say. You keep giving it up. And both the developer...
What? I'm sorry, your last name, sir?
Peterson, P-E-T-R-S-O-N. Both the developers represented and the city staffers stated it's not going to change the building size whatsoever. then I guess we don't need to do it. That's solved, right? Or did someone tell me a story? I kind of want an answer, but I guess I'm not getting it. And the other thing is, you stated the city still owns and maintains the sidewalk, which is a flat out lie because you just sold it. So we're getting inconsistent stories as we go. And then, well, I bought my house 15 years ago with a 35-foot height restriction, so you should thank them for giving you my view. Thanks.
Is there anybody else? Second call. Anybody else? Third and final call. No, you've already spoken.
Can I speak for my neighbor? He came.
No, he needed to come down or send in a letter.
Okay, I have his letter.
Yes. And did you give us a copy of that?
No.
Okay. All right. Staff, questions from council? Bob?
Yeah, a question for Dan. My question, Dan, to you is this a true statement? It's in a recommendation section of our packet where it says, in other words, nothing changes, nothing on the ground changes, and vacation and purchase of the sidewalk as proposed does not physically alter the sidewalk, the street, or the proposed footprint of the project, or the public's use and access of the area proposed to be vacated.
I believe that statement is correct. What's being vacated is the land under the sidewalk. The building footprint as designed from the perimeter of that building will not change. And I have a couple of comments in response to some of the things that were said. Originally, when the SEPA was issued in November, this project was sized at 135 units. It's because of some of the review that we've been working on and with the developer that has been downsized, and we're at a point at the 119 units where that's it. Because of the capped rental rates, the building can't be downsized any further. If the FAR, if the vacation doesn't go through, the only other way to address the FAR would be to change the FAR requirement, which the council could look at doing. The developer could look at modulating the interior courtyard perhaps differently. But what you see from the building that I showed, the elevation of 7th won't change. The elevation from 226 won't change. They can modulate that building in a variety of different ways. The issue is, because of the capped rates, this is where we're at. As far as the parking, all of that was included in our SEPA analysis. We looked at, as we're allowed in the code, to look at a variety of different sources for examples on our parking studies. We looked at similar projects that had significantly less. You'll notice at this point at 119 units, we have 60 parking spaces provided, so that's approximately a half a parking space per unit. The other examples of very similar projects are operating, not planned. They're operating at 0.38 and 0.36 parking places per unit. So this was a kind of a compromise in the parking analysis that was done. It was all part of the environmental work that was done there.
Council, any other questions at this point in time? Matt?
With respect to the Growth Management Act, we're oftentimes told that we need to increase density in various areas. How does this work towards helping us towards that goal?
Well, the density is part of our comprehensive plan that the city has adopted. It's part of our comprehensive transportation plan. We look at growth, not only in the Marina District, but citywide. And we've done work as part of our comprehensive planning that shows the density that's available to develop in the downtown. This certainly fits right within what's been planned for as far as density to meet those residential and job targets that we're mandated by the Growth Management Act to achieve.
One other question. In our research on the parking, did we look at Village Concepts' other operations? And is the parking consistent with what they're seeing be successful today?
Yeah, and those are the examples that I had mentioned.
Those are the examples.
I believe that, I don't know if they were specific Village Concepts. I'd have to check with staff. But
Yes, there were
Okay.
other operations run by Village Concepts.
Yeah, this one is for staff. Anybody can jump in because I don't know the answer to the question. Somebody sitting over there might. It seems some people think that selling a right of way is something that we shouldn't be doing. But I know in my terms on the city council, I've seen it quite often. Like what comes to mind is, the Des Moines Creek Business Park. I don't know how much of that. Remember, Tony, we were celebrating over the amount of revenue actually. I don't have a figure for that.
So the right-of-ways that were contained within the Des Moines Creek Business Park, we sold to the Port of Seattle for $6 a square foot, and we netted about $2 million from that.
Okay, that's what I was.
That's right.
And as I can recall, when I was, I still am on this board of directors of SPOR, we did the similar thing there too, did we not?
We did, and the value of the square footage of those right-of-ways was $636, and I don't have the total amount that we actually got from that.
Okay. And I know there are a number of other projects over the last 20 years that we've done this also. The point I'm trying to make is that this isn't a new concept. And you're saying this is definitely something that historically we have done on numerous occasions.
We have sold vacated rights-of-ways to facilitate development in many cases, yes.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of questions. Did the issue of the fire come up in the? Well, first of all, when was the hearing? Was it in front of the hearing examiner or not? I can't remember.
No, the approval. These are administrative approvals for this particular project. So, SEPA was issued in November on the review of the project. So once that's
and the parking study and the parking reduction was also
traffic studies, the parking studies, all part of that. Then, as the next step is part of that design review process, as we kind of went through that, and we're working as part of the design review, making sure all the setbacks are met and things like that. It came up in that design review process.
So, anyone who questioned the amount of parking, anyone who questioned impacts relative to the water table, anyone who questioned any of that had an opportunity to appeal that decision, that administrative decision, and that would have gone to the hearing examiner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there was no appeal.
No appeals.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Councilor, you want to make a motion? Bob?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Okay, I'll move, first of all, to suspend City Council Rule 26A in order to adopt draft ordinance number 15-065 on the first reading.
Second?
Motion made by Councilmember Scheffler, second by Councilmember Messer to suspend Council Rule 26A. All those in favor of suspending the rule, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Now let's go on to the second portion of the motion. Move to enact draft ordinance number 15-065, approving a vacation of certain portions of the right-of-way subject to the terms and conditions described therein, and authorize the city manager to sign the exclusive easement for public use and access sidewalk and utilities substantially in the form as submitted.
Second?
Motion made by Councilmember Scheckler, second by Councilmember Musser. Discussion. Listen.
I never like to use the analogy of the henny penny, the sky is falling story, but we represent a city of 30,000 residents, many of whom are seniors. When I heard the Village Concepts name come forward as the sponsor of this project and found that it was Washington State's first retirement community organization that was put in place, I felt confident that Mr. Langsford had done his due diligence in just my 7 years from the time that I decided to run for council forward. He's put a lot of thought into what to do with this piece of property, and I think several times we've heard different versions of thoughts that he had for it. So I'm confident he's been very thoughtful as a landowner in the community for a number of years, that what he put forward was a quality product. And so as I was going through the Village Concepts website, I was reading, set on a hill overlooking the historic and picturesque waterfront town, only blocks from marinas, residents enjoy all the neighborhood conveniences and a warm, home-like interior in the city of Gig Harbor. And I think we hear all the time of where the Gig Harbor on the west side, marinas, waterfront town, small shops, quaint restaurants. And I've heard good things about the partnership that Village Concepts has made with the city of Gig Harbor. And so with that, I support this motion.
Bob?
Yeah, obviously I'm supporting it, but I think it was interesting what I just heard from the public regarding it. Basically what I was hearing is that those that were against it simply didn't, for two reasons, didn't like the type of the project. And I won't go into detail because I think some of the things said about that I could never agree with. And the loss of use was the other thing I heard a couple of people talk about. But I think as a elected official, I'm certainly not going to sit here and discriminate against low-income housing, particularly in the manner in which it's being presented to us, which I think is done a very good job, or decide against something because of a couple loss of views from a few residents. We can't guarantee views. That's something we can never do. So that's the two main reasons I'm going for it. And Mr. Langford, I have to say, I wasn't too sure I was ever going to, where is he? Yeah, oh, there you are. I wasn't too sure I was ever going to see you come to a project while I was still here before I retired. I think you know what I'm talking about. I think. All right.
Matt?
My first point is, since Andy, they're calling you out left and right here, being on my left and right, I will say that when I first ran for office, Mr. Langsford and I met, and we talked about the city and visions and so forth. And the reality is we didn't come to the middle. And you listened. And you took it to heart. And I do think, it's taken a long time to come up with the right solution. And one of the things that Mr. Langsford recognizes, along with a lot of other people in the community, that, I'm out and about quite a bit, and being part of finance and econ, just being part of this council. This council has really been concerned about the face of Des Moines changing. And, when we lost QFC because they couldn't generate the revenues to support having a QFC. And it's an interesting thing that I learned is that so we started talking to other grocery stores, and they started telling us the same thing. They started saying, well, look, essentially we look at the location of that property, and then we look at who around it can support it. Well, the problem on the backside is it's water. So it's not a circle, and it doesn't fit into their models. Now folks have said, that would be an ideal place for redevelopment. And believe me, we have tried. We've had conversations with the owners, and we continue to have conversations with the owners of that property. There's 2 owners, and they're interested. They have come to the table many times talking about what they'd like to do. but their models can't make it pencil out. And when you're talking millions and millions of dollars, it's a lot for people to risk. These are family trusts that own the property. They have to make it work. One of the things that we've heard from outside sources who have come into the city is that there's not enough density in the city to support the businesses that are here. I can't cite exactly the numbers, but when QFC closed, it's because the average number of items purchased, and I say average because I realize some will have done their shopping there, but the average number of items purchased there were 3. So that's essentially a convenience store. And when you're trying to maintain produce and deal with spoilage and everything else, 3 doesn't work. So the other challenge was when we looked at, so the developers say that the QFC lot won't pan out financially. Why? Well, they're looking at mixed use. They want to put retail on the bottom and they want to put some kind of living on the top. Well, they have to know that there's enough demand for the retail to fill it and get those revenues, and they also have to know that there's enough demand in the area because of other businesses and so forth in the area that they won't be competing with themselves or having a large vacancy rate or competing with the other apartments and condominiums in the area. And frankly, their models are saying, right now, it's not going to happen. We're close, but we have to increase the density of our downtown corridor. Now, let me take it away from the development perspective and let me tell you what's come from the business side of things. The businesses that are in town are saying there's not enough foot traffic. Most of them are not open for lunch. A few key businesses are. And they're saying because there's not enough people here. There's not enough to help me keep a staff paid and keep the food flowing and so forth. There are a number of boutique-like businesses that have looked at us. Some have given it a go, but they're mostly doing it out of a labor of love for whatever it is that they are passionate about and their storefronts. They need more traffic. They need the community to be part of this. We as a council have supported concepts, anything, a monthly date night, encouraging people to get out in the community. I will say that many of our restaurants do benefit by monthly outings from senior organizations. This is a difficult one. 7th Avenue is, I've been here a long time, and sometimes I don't like telling people quite how long, but it doesn't look much different than it did when I rode my bike down there, so there's your clue. It's needed redevelopment, and we're trying to find the best way to move the city forward responsibly. We have done, as many of you have noted, we have worked through ordinances, zoning, tried to work with the community, trying to find middle ground, trying to create a manageable growth. And then I also hear, well, yeah, but let it all be up on Pack Ridge. Let it be outside the city. And the only thing I'll say, folks, is I deal with these finances, and I have since day one of being here. It's not enough. We need the business park. We need the Ridge. We need Redondo, and we need downtown development for this city to revitalize itself and maintain itself and the essential services that we've all come to know and love here. I do think this is a step that we have to take. And Andy, I don't want you to think I'm only saying I'm doing this because we have to. I don't believe we have to. I have worked with you, but we have spoken. And I do believe you tried to do your best to come up with the best arrangement. The other thing is that there are other folks in this community that are interested in redeveloping. They need to know that we are going to increase the density in downtown and that there will be support for their developments as well. It's really been a struggle, folks, and this is not something that I think any of us have not lost sleep over. I know personally, I've lost a lot of sleep over this. But after going through all of the financials, all of the reasoning, looking at other models around not just the Seattle area, but in other places that have had to revitalize, it's pretty broken, and this is the step to fixing it. I have to support this.
Any other comments? Vic?
Well, I'll start by saying I learned how to ride my bike sooner than Matt, so I've been here longer.
I appreciate you being that honest.
And I lived in the Marina District, and I was blessed to be able to come back to the Marina District and build a house where I grew up on my parents' property. I grew up here, I work here, I've raised my family here, I've sent my kids to this school, and I'm very invested in this community. 3 years ago, the council floated an idea of 75 feet along Redondo Drive. And quite frankly, it pissed me off. And they can attest that some of my conversations with them were not pleasant. And they came to a compromise, of which I thought was something that I could live with. And I thought, I can sit on the sidelines and throw rocks and try to sandbag this, or I can get involved and try to save our town, because it's a dump downtown. It is. And it's going farther down. I've seen the city, I've lived here in downtown when it was at its best. And it's not very good right now. And so I got involved with the water district. We helped put a main downtown. Got involved with city council to help save our town. And where I live, I have a beautiful view, pretty much unobstructed, of the water in downtown. And as these developments come in, as developments change along Redondo Drive and on 7th Avenue, like the rest of you, I'm going to lose some of my view. This isn't the city I grew up in. Times have changed. We live in a metropolitan suburban area. And unless we want to live in an area that has a lot of vacant buildings, more crime, more public nuisances, we need to do some things in town. We need to make some changes, and they're not easy. And I struggle with this constantly. And believe me, I have opinions at home that don't always match mine. But I look at what our city was, I look at what it's become, and I hope for the future. And while I would rather not sacrifice my view and pieces of it, I understand that I have to give something for the greater good. So, you know, I'm in the same boat. I know where you live and probably know where I live. And I struggle with it now. As I listen to you folks, I thought, no, we'll go the other way. But I have to support change. I have to do that, or we're not going to have a city that I'm going to feel proud to live in. And so I know we're all invested in it, and it's very, very emotional. And change doesn't come easy. But I believe that we're on the right path. It's not an easy road, and it's not an easy path, and it won't be, because we're all so invested and we all love our city so much. But I have to support moving forward with this. And I hope that we're doing the right thing. I really do, for all of us. So I'm going to support the motion.
I unfortunately don't have the many years that the rest of my council members do here in this beautiful city. I've been a resident for 13 years. I live on North Hill. I made an investment by moving into this town. I made another investment by choosing to have a family here. I made another investment when I bought my second house, and I remodeled my first one. I'm invested in this community. I want my children to be invested in this community, and I want it to be Des Moines, not North Federal Way, not South SeaTac, or Burien, or West Kent. I mean, throw them all out there. And on the current road, in the last 10, 15 years, that's the road that we're on. We've changed that freighter around, and we're moving in the right direction. Economic development is what we need. As my fellow council member said, the business park, downtown, the Marina district, the Marina floor, Redondo, we all need those pieces of the puzzle to sustain what we have and grow the services that we provide without losing any more. And for that reason, I'm going to have to support this.
Well, I don't have any hesitancy about doing this. Council made conscious decisions a few years ago that in order for us to be competitive with the surrounding jurisdictions in terms of being able to bring business to town, we were going to have to make some compromises. And we didn't rush to make compromises. We raised building heights after a year and a half's worth of study and analysis, and we did it 3 years ago. This project's been cooking for, going back, what, 8 years or longer? And the change in the economy obviously didn't allow a number of things to get built that we anticipated were going to be built till the downturn in 2009 and 2010 basically undercut everything. At some point in time, the ice has to be broken in terms of the changes that we want to see. You know, it's easy to be able to say, yeah, we want a grocery store. Yes, we want to see this. Yes, we want to see that. But the reality is we weren't supporting the stores that we had when they were here. Not to the degree necessary in order to make it work. And so what we do get told is that there needs to be more people. So in the half of the circle that isn't water, we need more people. That's a reality. And, you know, a number of the comments tonight were talking, you know, reference the height of the buildings and everything. That's just a rehash of discussions we had 3 years ago. Had nothing to do with the vacation of the sidewalk, which is the actual topic tonight. And the only thing we've done is settle the dirt underneath the concrete. That's it. In most cases, most property owners own the middle of the street now, whether you recognize it or not. We had the same issue come up when we did a right-of-way vacation related to the old 509 right-of-way in terms of getting our trail. It was the same thing. So I'm excited to see what amounts to the ice being broken in the Marina district and the good things that are coming from that. There's at least 2 or 3 other projects along 7th Avenue that we're going to see some activity being taken on. And that's important because it's going to provide opportunities. You know, a lot of those properties, a lot of these buildings that we have in downtown, the businesses that we have now are struggling in part because the absentee landlords are not maintaining their property. Or there's an internal struggle with family because of health or because of other issues and you got people wanting to charge outlandish rents for buildings that haven't been upgraded in the 50 years since it was built, or rain is pouring through the roof. And the irony is that the businesses that are struggling to hold on to those are looking for other places to stay in Des Moines. They want to stay in Des Moines. But is there any retail space for them to move into? No, because nothing new has been built here in decades. And that's part of the challenge that we have. As the new construction comes in, including some of the retail space in this building and some of the others, it's going to provide options for the people who are stuck in the retail spaces that we have now that are either getting forced out because of increasing rents or because of the lack of maintaining of those buildings. And what that's going to do is it's going to force those property owners to fix up their dumps, to fix the roof, to pave their parking lot, to charge reasonable rents, to fix their building or knock them down and build something new. Those are the kinds of things that are coming from these types of projects. And we're going to see more of it. And we need to see more of it. Because without that kernel of support in terms of people shopping, they're all going to struggle the same way that the QFC did. People see it as a convenience instead of as something that they should be going to on a regular basis. For all of those reasons, I'm strongly in favor of the vacation of the right-of-way, the sidewalk. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Draft ordinance number 15-065, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Des Moines, Washington. It's got to be reworded at some point in time. Vacating a portion of the city right-of-way generally described as a portion of the west right-of-way on 7th Avenue South, a portion of the north right-of-way of South 226th Street, located in the City of Des Moines, for limited purpose, subject to the conditions and requirements set forth herein. Okay. Last item, update on the Marina's financial sustainability plan. Okay. Okay, we'll come back at 8:55. Okay, update on the Marina financial sustainability plan.
Mayor Kaplan and council members, at the council retreat last November, we discussed the future of the Marina. At that time, the council expressed its intention to continue to operate the Marina as a working marina and to maintain ownership and control of the city's waterfront. At that meeting, the council directed the staff to develop a plan.
Could you move your papers off the microphone?
You bet. At that meeting, the council directed the staff to develop a plan to sustain the Marina in that capacity for the future. At a subsequent council meeting in January, the staff laid out the framework of a sustainability plan that included a SWOT analysis, a revised capital improvement plan, revised financial projections, and ultimately a plan for moving forward, utilizing and enhancing the Marina's competitive advantages. The staff has met with the Municipal Facilities Committee twice to review the progress on the plan. At the last meeting, the Finance Director presented the revised financial projections and discussed the methodology the staff used to create the projections. The committee asked the staff to do some further projections based on using more bonded debt, and that work has been done. Frankly, this process has been much harder than we first expected, and attaining the sustainability for the Marina will involve making some very difficult choices. Tonight, our Finance Director is here with us, Danielle Mason, to discuss the financial projections and the impacts on the capital improvement plan. After that, we'll both be available to answer questions.
Hey, Danielle.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Mason. I'm the Finance Director for the city. So we were asked to take a look at the Marina and come up with a business plan. So we looked at the problem and the scope of what the Marina was doing and what we had been doing in the past. We could not come up with a sustainable plan. So we had to look at things differently and view things differently so that we could come up with options that might be workable. So in order to do that, we took the marina and all the things that the marina used to do, and we broke it into 4 different zones. We were very specific because when we looked at the activities, we found they weren't all the same. And so those different activities have unique characteristics and therefore unique opportunities in solving those problems. So the 4 zones that we looked at and came up with was the Marina Operations Zone. So I'm going to show you a map in a minute, or if you have some of the council meetings, council, that's your last page there. That's what we consider to be marina operations. This is the essential functions of running a marina. Okay, it's got the docks, it's got the boats, it's got the water, it's got the bulkheads. Those are the assets and the operations that belong in the group Zone 1. We then looked at the marina floor, and we found another area that includes the boat dock, or the boat yard area, where we are doing a slightly different business model. You know, we've got the boat yard there. They're a different type of business operating. They have ideas for expanding and looking for new capital needs, and what do we need to do to facilitate that. We also looked at an additional area that could be redeveloped. So what we're coming to tonight is not a finished plan. It's the beginning of a new way of looking at things. And it's the first steps in many steps to come to answer the questions of what are we going to do to make the marina sustainable. The third area we looked at, we call the public benefit zone. That's an area that basically includes north parking lot. And again, we'll get to a map in just a minute. And that zone has basically a public purpose. It's a parking lot. It's got the fishing pier. Lots of people go out there just to be there. Okay? Okay, but that has capital needs as well, and it has maintenance needs. And so the question is, how are we going to pay for those in that area? And then the fourth area that the marina has traditionally served, and those maintenance and customer service staff have helped out in, was what we're calling the Redondo zone. So we have a parking lot there, and we have amenities there that need to be taken care of. And that zone's a little bit different. It does have a source of revenue of its own. Currently, it has a parking tax. And so its opportunities and challenges are, again, a little bit unique. And so we want to come up with not one plan, but 4 plans to address all these different unique combinations of needs. And so here is the map that I was talking about. So what you'll see in the gray is what we would call the marina operations area. The middle part there that's the green would be the footprint, essence, of the economic development area. Now you see a little bit of gray in the middle, and that's where we have the storage area, and that's a rental area at the moment. So it generates and acts a little bit differently. So if we're looking at developing this, what is an essential part of the numbers part of the model means that if we need that revenue in order to sustain the operations of the rest of the marina, if that gets redeveloped, somehow there's going to have to be some sort of recognition that something's got to come back to the marina or it's not going to float. Okay, and then the orange part there, you can see the pier. That's zone 3, which is the public area. Okay, and that essentially is the parking lot and the pier. Okay, everybody. So again, the next couple slides, I can go through those pretty quickly. Again, it just basically lists what the unique combinations are. So the marina, what's its challenges? Well, it's the docks and the tenant restrooms and the guest restrooms and the tenant parking and the office building and the maintenance shop. So not only do we have to find a plan that's going to meet the operating needs of this area, we also have to find out some way that we're going to replenish the capital, because we can't stay in business, we can't keep going if we can't renew our investments in those assets. Some of its revenue sources, it gets through the rental of the mortgage, the fuel sales, utility resales back to the rental customers, fuel and the launch fees, and it includes the operating costs along with the keeping all the docks and such going. We've got customer billing, administration, and those kinds of delivery costs. Okay, and right now, again, it's kind of in that hatch mark, but we've got the dry shed rentals because, again, it's generating ongoing revenues that is essential to keep the financial plan of the marina solvent in the near and the long-term future. So the economic development zone includes, like I said, the boatyard, the parking lots. It has some of the current revenue coming off of the building lease. And again, that's a little bit different than the rental from the mortgage spaces. And it comes with its own operational costs. Okay, Zone 3, we've got our fishing pier, public restrooms. There is no current revenue source available to take care of this public use area. Okay, and so that's going to be a challenge of a different sort, okay, because this area is not necessary and is not the core mission of the marina. It's a public benefit. It's not a marina. The people who moor their boats there don't need this area. It's there for the enjoyment of the public. So it's going to look towards public resources to take care of it. Okay, and then here's the Redondo zone, and again, it will include the boardwalk. We had a huge capital requirement replacement. The storm kind of upped the ante on that, and so we are facing those issues and challenges. It does, like I said, it's different than the last zone because it does currently have a revenue source to help pay for its operational and assets repairs. So in the financial numbers, we'll take a look at some numbers here. But these are the things that we want to look at, and here's some of the key points of what all those numbers are going to mean here. In order to keep the marina going in the plan that we've come up with, it includes all the operating revenues and expenditures that exist right now in those zones. Okay? Another step will be to separate those out. We think it's going to be fairly revenue neutral on by taking out the Redondo area. We think it's going to be kind of self-sustaining when you take those revenues and costs out. But right now, they're all in the numbers. The dry shed businesses and all of those are in the numbers. Okay, when we look, the key bottom line, so to speak, in this model is going to be the purple number, and it's going to be the ending balance. Okay, that's the kind of the cash reserve that when we get our money in and when the money goes out, we got to have enough at the end of the year. We need to have a certain amount that's required by our bond covenants, by our debt that we have out there. Okay, we don't have, we have promised our bondholders that we will raise enough revenues to stay a certain higher than our expenses. And we have to keep those cash balances at a certain level. 2022 and 2027 are in green. They're going to, and I'll show you where those are in a minute. But those are key because those are the years that our debt runs out, our existing debt that we've already committed to. Because what we have found in running through this model is that we don't have enough capacity, enough financial capacity to make significant investments in capital until we've paid off the last investments we've made in capital, which is reflected in those debt payments.
In relation to that, is that the bonding capacity strictly from the marina itself or the city's capacity to bond?
The marina's debt service ratios. So what we have per our bond agreement.
Strictly the marina.
Strictly the marina, yes. Okay, because within that we have covenanted a certain ratio. Okay, and then all financial models, you know, if I had a crystal ball, I would have invested in Wall Street and I wouldn't be here tonight. Okay, so I can't say that it's going to be perfect. But what we're developing here is a working plan. It gives us a basis, it gives us a start, it's going to guide decisions and discussions that we can have, and as we come up with different ideas, it gives us a way to quantify those and say, well, what is the impact of that idea? Have we thought of everything that we need to make sure that we've included all the costs that we've needed as well as the revenues? Okay, and it kind of is going to give us a way to do that. It'll be an ongoing model that will update every year. It's part of the budget process, and so it's a living model. Okay, so I've already talked again that we've only up until 2022. We're only going to have enough money to do what I call minor capital, and we will pay for that in cash. Let's see, anything else interesting here? Long life docks are paid. Okay, so actually I've got two models here. So when we met with the committee, we talked about the cash paying, that essentially we were going to pay off the debt, and once the debt was paid off, the plan was, will we have enough money to replace the docks on an ongoing basis? And if we did, how fast would we be able to buy a dock? And how long were those docks going to last before we get the last one replaced? And so I'll show you kind of the cash model, and then we have the debt model. But essentially the highlights are we ran the debt numbers, and it doesn't work. We don't have the capacity to take on enough debt to replace all those docks at one time or even over several years close together. And it came out that it really worked, that you would end up getting your last dock replaced faster and not have any debt left over when you were done under a cash model. You would get the docks just a couple of years earlier under a debt model, but then you still had 20 years of debt to pay after that. Whereas the cash model, if they actually could stay, then you would get to the last one, but you wouldn't have the debt when you got to the end. Now, it's going to be very long lives. Now, will the docks last? That's going to be the big question. But again, this is a living model, so as things change, we can factor that in and update our ideas. So if we purchase the docks with cash, then this would be, I got MDOC on there twice, my apologies. But this would basically be the schedule that it would be at, and this is how old the docks would be at the time they were replaced. That's how long it will take us. And these are estimated costs to replace the dock. Okay? Now, so okay, and if we replaced them with debt, then they are replaced a little bit sooner. But again, when you get to 2042, then you still got 20 years of debt to pay after that. So, let's see. All right, and then I want to, let's see. Let me get to... Okay, I am a finance director. I do live in a world of numbers. Okay.
Little numbers.
And when you look on that last sheet, there are lots of teeny tiny numbers. I was hoping with the big screen they wouldn't be quite so teeny tiny. But I just want to, like I said, briefly, I've talked about what we're talking about. So here's the ending balance here. We're running at 700, 600, 500. So this is the number that we have to make work. We got 200 here. That's kind of sort of too low. The green numbers, which you can't really see very well because of the color, is kind of the minimum, maximum desired target range of what we would want to be in with that cash. So, we really, nothing less than 300, and a good, solid, comfortable range should be around 700,000. Again, because this is variable, we're subject to the economy. This is not like a water utility or electric utility where you have a captive audience and a captive rate. It is subject to customer demand. So it is more volatile, which means it should have a higher reserve, what we would hope. But having said that, we're also struggling. So we're just right on the margin and we're struggling kind of the story of the city. The marina is too. It's struggling. So these are the assumptions that we used in order to create the numbers. We assumed that labor rates were increasing, 103.5%. Benefits increase, medical costs always seem to increase higher than labor costs. That supplies and services, are at 1%. So that's probably a little low. The other ones might be a little high. Again, we can play with the assumptions. We can change the assumptions to whoever wants to do that. But we can do that and see what the effect is. And so the model's interactive, and we can do that. We can run scenarios. Okay, this is the list, basically then, in the time period of what the capital needs are for the marina. And you can see it's kind of a long list. Okay, so this is where we are now. And so there's a few high priority things that we're looking at doing. We've got to replace the gate security system so that the gates work properly to protect the docks and the access to the docks. We're looking as a priority of replacing the electricals on each of the docks to provide better service to our tenants and reduce our risk of fire hazards. Okay, the fuel dispensers are getting kind of old. We're going to have to replace those, and they're probably not going to wait until the end of the debt cycle. So these are currently what we're suggesting or looking at as the near-term minor projects until we get to that magical 2022 year. In that year, we are looking at doing some other things. There's some stormwater requirements from the Department of Ecology that needs to be addressed that would require tearing up and redoing the parking lot area. So we would be timing that with another very important project of getting the transformer relocated in front of JDOC there. And since those are related projects, they would probably go. So we're looking at doing another bond measure, a minor one, and we're looking at reconfiguring docks D, E, and F.
That's the reconfiguration of D, E, and F is significantly higher than any number I've seen before, like by about $1 million. Is there a reason for that?
Oh, what's the reason for that?
That includes just total replacement of D, E, and F, because we don't really know what kind of shape they're going to be in
So it's
7
total
years.
replacement, it's not just upgrading the other two and removal of the one dock, okay.
So
That makes sense.
we are investing in docks. So we're not waiting completely, we are. And again, we want to point out we have, our insurance has paid for an investment in JDOC, okay? This is not the recommended way to replace capital, but we did indeed replace, a good portion of JDOC. And so again, this is addressing D, E, and F. And I just want to throw out, Joe did a revenue sensitivity model and said that, well, it doesn't pay right now to change the bigger slips for the quantity of smaller slips, that trade-off doesn't make sense at our current vacancy rates. It probably will be later. We don't know exactly when it's going to go, but we figure probably by 2022 we will have hit that mark.
So 7 years from now.
It's going to be here faster than you think. Yeah. So those were the priority to address kind of the revenue side of the model as well as the capital replacement side, trying to configure projects to get the biggest bang for their buck. The other thing that may or may factor into this is we've got their share of paid parking. So if we look at doing paid parking as part of the public zone and or the marina zone, if marina is going to get revenue from this, then they need to pay their share of that parking cost. If we decide to do it sooner, then if the marina is going to pay their share, then some of this other stuff is going to have to be pushed off. So those are the...
That parking is for the south lot's share,
Yes.
correct? So the north lot or the public area would have another number associated?
It
with
would have its own cost of capital in order to install the public parking process.
So let me ask a couple more questions related to this. Because of the way that the zones are defined, is the bulkhead around the north lot considered part of the marina's responsibility, or is it considered part of the Zone 3 public?
Let me see if I can get to that picture. Basically,
I mean, I don't want
Yeah.
to make you jump around too much.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get an idea as to
it's
whether or not
the top and the side that is away from the marina is considered to be public zone because the marina doesn't need it. To the extent that it's on the side that is the water that's facing the docks and the guest moorage area, that up to the breakwater there, that's deemed to be part of the marina's
So then-
responsibility.
So then, one of the questions related to the expenditures related to the operating expenditures of the marina currently is the lease we have with our friends from the Department of Natural Resources. If that became part of the other zone, or the Zone 3, and treated differently, would there be any difference on whether or not we would be charged for that lease?
Not really. I guess if in terms of trying to allocate the expenses between the zones, part of that, what we call lease area B, is out underneath the entrance to the marina, so that would be a zone, a marina zone type expense, but that's actually it's water dependent, so that's a cheaper rate. The upland portion of that, which is probably runs about halfway up that north bulkhead, it's essentially the old Puyallup Avenue. That's the most expensive part of that lease, and that would be considered part of the.
So in the model, does it shift a portion of the cost of that lease into the Zone 3 operating?
Not at this point, no. All of the, right now, in this preliminary start, all of the lease.
The same
rate is
assumptions for
being-
operations, essentially?
Yes,
Okay.
as it exists. Now,
Okay.
as we transition, as we come up with more ideas and to refine what those are, then we can move those out. And like I said, the plan would be to come up with a separate plan for that zone.
No, I
Yeah.
was just trying to see if the baseline
Yeah.
was changing or something that's
And,
not. So-
and I would argue, yes, the baseline will change as we refine the numbers and really hone down to what are we paying for and what is it benefiting. And if that part of the aquatics lease is only benefiting the public benefit area, then that cost deserves to stay there, not be part of the marina process.
What, on the docks you've identified, do you have an end of life for those docks? Have you identified that?
Well, I have
Other
the
than
end of
by fire,
financing life, but.
2014, no.
That was a great debate that we had just a few days ago when I was sitting down with these two to go over this presentation. And I think the real answer is maybe. Joe and his staff are really good at the maintenance activities and replacing those parts that are wearing out. So the top part of it is the easy part to maintain. It's the flotation underneath that one's a lot tougher to really get a handle on. So are they all going to last for as long as those years that we have? The best we can say is maybe, and we're going to do our dangest to make sure that they do, but we can't guarantee it.
Is there any advantage, like the north parking lot, you're kind of alluding that that's a public zone or a pub benefits the public. Is there any advantage to transferring in the liabilities for maintenance and upkeep into the parks department, similar to the Redondo boardwalk? And the park seems to be pretty good with, and maybe there's just more of them, but pretty good at getting grants, and maybe that could help support the maintenance and the ongoing use of the boardwalk area, the north end of the marina, the little park down where the farmer's market used to be. Is that something that is viable?
I think at the very least, we want to redesignate or specifically designate in our city stuff that it is a park, because that will allow more types of funding availability and a bigger variety of availability that we can go after if we included as part of our park system. So whether we create a special park district or not, there might be a bunch of different ideas we can talk about. But at the very least, I think we do sooner than later. I noticed in the comprehensive plan that we're going to be adopting. I don't know a lot about that stuff, but it said public facility district. So if it needs to be a park, we need to look at putting it in our park maps, considering it a park, so that when we deal with outside sources, we can hold that up and say, yeah, it's a park, we want park type money for it.
And that would allow you to take your marina generated revenues and put them back into
the marina,
the operational and moorage areas of the marina.
And that's going to be essential. That'll be essential in order to keep that functional, yes. Okay. Any other question? I mean, really, that's the meat of it there. Those, and the big question is how long will the docks last? So we'll monitor this as, you know, if Joe starts running into hundreds of $1,000s a year maintenance costs, we know that we're going to have to do something different. But hopefully with any luck, I do want to show you what that looks like. If we can make it there, then with the fund balance up there, we are at, you know, every couple of years we're able to, once all that debt gets paid off, we can reinvest that. We save up for a couple of years, we buy a dock. We save up for a couple of years, we buy a dock. And so it moves us down the row until we have that. But yeah, this is the lives. We're asking our docks to last 70 years.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I know our marina crew is fabulous, but that's really asking a lot.
So what? Right.
I will say though that when I first saw this thought process, it's obvious that we have to do something different, and the work that the staff has done has created an opportunity for us to really look at the marina as it's defined today, and really look at it differently, and it gives us a chance, like was just discussed about, you know, park designation and new funding options there. We're going to have to find other funding options to make this whole thing flow. I really, and I don't know if it's in public-private partnership, I don't know. You have called out an economic development area that we need to look at, and that, which means the beauty of this model is that we had to look at everything before. Now we don't have to look at it in its entirety, and we've always said we want to hang on to the marina, we want it to continue to be a city asset, and we, you know, this has to succeed. So it is a jewel that we have, but by looking at it under the model that you're proposing, I think it gives us a fair chance. I will say, I appreciate you saying this is a working model, because 70 years out of a dock I don't think is going to work. So, but it gives us a chance to figure out what that equation can look like.
And it'll give us a monitoring process, because again, there is that curve and it's going to drop off. But what this will do is it'll give us a way to monitor where are we at on that curve, you know, on that repair.
So if revenues come in better than expected due to whatever arrangement, you can start to pull things in.
Yes.
There's a lot of years to pull in though, from 70 to, you know, practical. So
it's a start.
Yeah, and it's a great start. It really is.
Why don't you show them the bonding model?
You see, our purple suddenly starts getting very red and very large cumulative, because we just essentially can't afford to make the debt service payments. And that's what happens. So even if we did a capital. So here's, I think, fairly close to the same on 2022, but we said, okay, we're going to replace, when 2027 comes out here, we're going to do another bond issuance. And then we're going to try and wait a few more years, and we'll try and do another one to get a few more docks in. But we, you know, as soon as we get past one, it's like where we just simply cannot afford the debt service. And honestly, I've tried to be reasonable. You know, I'm in the 5-6% range on interest for debt because, I'm thinking by the time we get out to 2032, we're not going to be at 1% interest anymore. So again, it's not perfect. I've tried to kind of give an order of magnitude, and like I said, if people want to change the assumptions, I can show you how fast, if you changed 1% to a 2% cost on supplies, how fast we get in trouble.
Let me ask another question. We anticipate in our municipal improvement plan X dollars coming in on an annualized basis from real estate excise tax.
Yes.
If we had windfalls above whatever projections there were, there's nothing legally that prevents us from applying a portion or all of that to
Marina?
To the marina?
I think there are restrictions that would not qualify. I need to double check, but streets are okay. That's what I say. Parks are okay. Trails are okay.
Why wouldn't the marina? It's a capital expenditure.
It has to be a blessed capital expenditure. Not all capital expenditures are eligible for REIT.
Well, you've got the two REITs,
Right.
but the larger chunk of REIT is seeming to me was broader.
No, it's 2.25%.
Yeah, it is broader, and it does have more sources.
One is very restricted, one is broader.
Right.
That's true, as far as what you can spend.
And I will double check on that, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's not, because I had to work really hard to look at it for both Redondo and the public area there. Because if we want to, some of the other issues that came up that aren't on this list is I took off the restroom. We're talking about the marina needs to replace those guest restrooms. By putting them on over there and calling that a park, that's where I did the research, we can use REIT, for example, to pay for a new restroom if it's part of a park. But as far as flat out helping the marina, like a dock or something like that, I'll double check, but I'm thinking it might not qualify.
I think it's worth exploring to see whether or not that is an option. Because even if it's a marginal amount, a lot of marginal amounts are going to be needed to be able to collectively add up to something.
I think looking at this model, the area of possibility of new revenue for the marina, if council wants to decide to put it there, because again, council's got a whole city to take care of, but if it chooses to do that, then there's probably, if we can grow that economic development zone to something that produces more than what it is currently in the current format, then that would be something that would be possible and open to council to look at what all the other economic conditions are, and maybe any extra over there could be devoted to the marina again.
There's nothing that legally, regardless of the type of business, whether it was specifically marina related or whether it was
that's within
high-tech
council's
company coming
discussion.
in or whatever.
Yeah.
There's nothing that would prohibit that revenue from remaining in the marina, correct?
That's correct. That would be a council choice.
So there are potential policy decisions relative to what happens with the revenue stream from any of the zones relative to.
Yes, because they're public at that point, and council has the right to use public proceeds basically almost however it wants. Like I said, REIT has its own legal restrictions around it, but if you were creating rental revenue or parking revenue, there is no legal restriction to say it has to go one place or the other.
Or sales tax or B&O tax or whatever.
Right.
If we said that all the revenue that came generated from whatever business activity, commercial activity occurred within zone 2 remained within the marina, as an example, that.
There's no legal constraints to prevent that I'm aware of.
And the attorney didn't jump out of his chair, so I'm assuming that's a good sign.
But first we got to get something in there that's going to generate it for us.
So back to the REIT part. So if that north lot and the seawall and the fishing pier, the seawall on the north side and along the west side, if that was designated a park, then some of that REIT money could go towards maintaining the seawall, the fishing pier, the things that needed to happen there. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, REITs normally, yeah, I need to look at the edges of that. For capital, definitely yes. There are some rules that are changing on the maintenance side of things, how you use it for maintenance, that may sunset out here in the next couple of years. But definitely for capital, if it's, I've already asked that question, if it's part of the park, even if it's a parking lot that's part of a park, then, because normally parking lots all by themselves, if we did a parking lot in the middle of town, that wouldn't qualify for REIT.
Right,
but it's part of a park.
Lot, but
it would.
The structure that keeps the parking lot from washing away back into the sandbar.
As long as it's part of a park system.
Yeah. Okay.
Which begs one more question then, which is, there's no legal impediment to, as related to the original bond covenants or development of the marina, that prohibits our indicating that zone as part of the park as an example.
Redeveloping it or something of the sort. I did not see anything in the bond covenants. I've been in other places and I've read other bond covenants that have a transfer of asset type requirement written into them. I did not see any of that in our bond stuff. It would be worth a question to a bond attorney to confirm. But I didn't see anything in the face of any of the bond documents that would lead me to believe that we couldn't.
And the example is that when we acquired the beach park, part of it was the sources of revenue that were used to purchase the beach park. Basically said that it had to be used and maintained as a park. If anything altered it, it would revert to something else. I'm wondering if there was something similar related to the marina when it was constructed, if there was something there. But it's something we should investigate just to make sure that there isn't some sort of impediment there. Because we don't want to be doing a bunch of work if, in fact, at the start, we already have a barrier that we either need to work around or...
The attorney's taking it up. Look at that.
So, and I just want to be sure that whatever decision we make relative to the zones and the designations or whatever changes we might make from either from an operation or a designation standpoint, both within our comp plan or zoning or whatever, that that we're not running any impediments up front. I'd rather know the potential legal impediments up front, so that we're not cannibalizing staff time on something that couldn't be.
So speaking of staff time a little bit here, do I have enough support? Is this the right time to ask? But for the Redondo zone, okay, kind of separate. I mean, can we get direction to go ahead and pursue that? Because in my mind, in order to implement that type of thing, then I would be creating a special revenue fund, and basically for the Redondo area. And that special revenue fund would collect all the parking tax, and then it would pay out its bills, be it operating bills, capital bills, however council wanted to decide to do it. But if we're going to keep all this stuff separate, I'm going to need some accounting structure to be able to keep all that going.
Let me ask, I assume the community did this.
We didn't get to Redondo during.
No, I don't think we did.
Question.
Yeah.
So, are you talking about Redondo possibly becoming
A special revenue fund. That zone would become its own accounting entity, so that we could track all the revenue that it came in and how it used its revenue, and it wouldn't be commingled with the marina stuff.
Let me interrupt to also comment. At next week's council meeting, we're going to be giving you the preliminary results of the Redondo parking study that was the subject of a public meeting last night. And then a few weeks after that, I can't remember exactly when, we're going to be bringing, I think it's in June, bringing to you finalization of that plan. And it's going to include creating new parking areas, paid parking, discussions of lighting issues, public safety issues, and the like. And I think it dovetails very nicely into what we're doing here by recognizing that Redondo is kind of a special place versus the marina. So I think what we're going to end up doing is creating a special revenue fund for the entire Redondo area beyond what it is that Danielle's talking about right now.
As long as it has money at the end, so it's going to take transfers in. But yeah, it gives us a way to do that. And I'm just looking kind of unofficially because I'm going to be bringing to council some special revenue fund requests for REIT and the others that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. And I just wanted to put the Redondo one in there as well, if that was a direction that council wanted to go. You still would have a chance to vote on it later, up or down.
Conceptually, I like the idea. I have a lot of questions about how that works, given that you're talking about a park there, parking lot there, boat ramp, boardwalk, and there are questions now as to, in some way, what constitutes a park, what constitutes marina or marine services. So how do you define that, or its purpose, or the scope of it, I think needs a lot of conversation so that we've got a clear understanding of how that all fits together. Because you've got marina staff who are putting floats in the water to make the ramp facility.
In a nutshell, it's actually quite easy from an accounting standpoint. Operationally, nothing has to change, and we can go indefinitely. Now, if we want to change things, we can, but starting out, it doesn't. All it has to do, the way it works, is when they go work at this other place at Redondo, right now, they got all of Redondo parking money, and they have all the maintenance costs, all in the marina. The difference would be the Redondo fund would have all of the parking money, and it would pay Joe's guys whenever, or anybody else who came to do the service for them. And so it would just be a chargeback. It's just an accounting chargeback. So we keep track of the cost of maintenance, the cost of whatever in that area. So from an accounting standpoint, it's really easy.
And you're talking about funds, not accounts, right?
I am talking, yes, a true fund.
A separately designated fund and not an account.
It has its own cash balance, and at the end of the year, we need it to be positive.
But it wouldn't be encumbered by its allocation, by the way we want it allocated, correct?
It wouldn't be encumbered.
Well, what I'm saying is that right now, those dollars go into the marina.
Yes. And
so if those dollars, the marina needs the income stream.
We're looking, and preliminarily, WASH seems to indicate if we take all the operating costs, and by the time it pays its parking tax, that the operating cost that Joe's incurring is about break even with the revenues he's getting. So we think we can just kind of move that over here, and everything will kind of just continue the way it is. I mean, it should be a break even proposition at the scope that it is.
Yeah, but if it's not a break even and say there's additional revenues left over, I just want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position where that money is now all of a sudden not available to the marina.
It's just accounting, not operations.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so you're afraid as to.
Well, there's money in a fund.
Yes.
And if there's extra at the end of the window, whatever that window turns out to be, I just want to make sure that it wouldn't prevent us from allocating it back to the marina.
If you so chose.
If we so chose.
We just need to define that as a purpose in the fund then. And when we create the fund, you can put that in there. There is no legal restriction over this money other than what you want to put on it.
That's what I wanted to be clear about.
It's the same issue relative to the marinas transferring to the general fund.
Okay, all right.
But you got,
right now, from previous discussion, you might recall, we probably lose $15,000 or $20,000 a year at Redondo now after the parking tax gets taken out. And I would anticipate in the future, if there's any kind of surplus revenue there that takes care of operating costs, there's also going to be a lot of capital needs there. Sooner or later,
well, that was the same. It was the same thought I had relative to transfer from the marina to the general fund. If instead of the exit.
Conversations with Public Works about this study, there's right-of-way improvements needed. So I don't see a surplus of money coming out of Redondo. I think Redondo's always going to need every dollar.
But there'll be an expectation that goes along with that. I mean, and that's the part to keep in mind, that the expectation is that that money will be used solely for there. So even though now it's commingled, you know, so there's, that's something to take into consideration as well.
So what you're asking is to monitor the expenses down there for a while, and then you're going to come back to us with, these are the expenses, this is the revenue, this is what it would look like in the future if we changed how we manage the revenues received down there. Is that what you're asking permission to do?
Well, I'm looking to I'm looking to move forward on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're looking to implement that.
Yes.
So I guess the next question is then do you have an accurate accounting of
Well, I thought I did until Joe just
costs
pointed out that
and
maybe I
revenues?
don't. So we will, yes, we
Because
can.
you said you're losing about $15,000, but you know, is there something that's more?
So what we want to do is we want to come up with a financial plan for the Redondo zone that's going to look at what its revenues are, what its operating costs are. If we implement these street things, what do we need to do? What if we increase parking? What if we decrease, how many hours we're there on the ground facilitating? We want to be able to have its own little model to run these different options through.
Would you be okay with us, would it work for you if we give you the okay for development of the plan for Redondo and that zone before establishing the fund?
Yeah, I can do that. And like I said, from an accounting standpoint, if I need it, I can go put it in the books. As long as you bless it by the end of the year, we'll probably be okay. And if not, I'm going to have to transfer it all back. So we're flexible. Yeah, we can get counsel you need, and you don't need to adopt it until we can get some more numbers for it.
So I'd like to know, I guess, as you develop this, this is for things that are Redondo zone specific.
Yes.
In terms of whether it's boardwalks, streets, sidewalks, extra police, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of areas, a lot of different parts of the city that could have access to this fund, depending upon the services that are provided.
That are rendered. Right. The fund can pay the bills however it needs to pay the bills. I guess part of the point of the zones is to, again, think differently, and unfortunately it's going to be to make tough choices because none of the zones have enough money. So by creating different zones, it can focus the conversation a little bit to the benefits and who is the beneficiary of this zone. If there's not enough money, that zone needs to decrease the costs, therefore service levels, or they need to increase their revenue for that zone. And it gives us a way, we got a big city, and it gives us a way to think about the problems and the impacts in a much smaller, focused way.
So if you have, houses that are fairly expensive down there, the property values are more expensive there as opposed to maybe some other areas of the city. And so are those folks going to be paying a disproportionate amount of revenue for their services? And were these folks that maybe aren't paying so much, are we going to end up having unequal taxation?
No, because taxes aren't in the equation.
Okay,
so this would not be affecting tax as a resource at all.
So this is just a revenue source outside of property taxes.
Yes.
So each zone would support their zone. So, but still, there's some inequities in that these folks over here want the same level of, we'll use police protection as the folks down here, but these folks can afford their zone generates more revenue, so they get more and these get less.
I would argue that police services is not something that would put into that zone or that model.
Okay, so but roads, or sidewalks.
And to a point, based on what it is you do with this plan, if the plan is being put together to create more sidewalk, maybe a signalized intersection, kind of going with it again. And then the revenues that are generated there need to help pay for that. But generalized services like overlaying the road, which we should be doing every 20 years, that will be done out of my argument. out of a different fund. So this is more purely operational for the unique needs of that area. But the police type things, that should be spread out across the entire city.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be an interesting conversation to have when we get down to it.
So why don't we talk about next steps? I think you have another slide in the presentation.
Well, that was kind of my next step, was, again, it's to work on developing the details. It's to work on exactly what you're saying. Is to go to each zone and create and analyze it uniquely so that we can see, oh, pretty good. There, I'm done. So that we can see what it is that affects it, what is the unique characteristics, and have these discussions that you're talking about, but not all at the same time, that we can have a meeting, we can have a committee, and we can go through what's unique, brainstorm what do we want to do, go back, work on the plan some more, and keep it going and developing. And as we have other parts of the city, like what Dan's doing, we can integrate those in to the financial plan aspect of what's going on. And hopefully, again, we've got a lot of city with a lot of challenges. Hopefully this will be a way that we can approach it that might make it a little bit easier to solve those hard questions. So that's the next steps. I'll be busy continuing these discussions, creating more numbers, more models, more spreadsheets, to keep track of that. And eventually I'll be able to put them in the accounting system and keep track of them as well.
Council, thoughts? Okay, Matt?
You know, I don't know what the zone concept looks like beyond the marina, but I can say that for the marina and the challenges in front of us, I'm very much in support of it. I think we have to figure out, you know, you have to be able to not just figure out where the money, what area is doing well and what area is not doing well, but you have to be able to trend it. And, you know, because one zone may do well for a while, and then if you start to see it cut, you know, to die off, then you got to figure out, well, what do we got to do to revitalize it? Looking at the big picture, I think it's hard to see. So I'm very much in favor of it, and you know, I actually wouldn't have a problem if the fund's not encumbered, and it doesn't sound like it is. I wouldn't even have a problem with her going forward with the Redondo fund.
Because the Redondo fund will be funded through a budget appropriation. Again, we have till the end of the year to do it, a budget appropriation, if we create it this year. And so that could be helpful.
You'll be able to monitor it over the course of the year, so we would have an idea.
We'll have better, because then we get it there before the summer season comes, and we can kind of monitor things a little bit more easily.
What I'm struggling with a little bit is that different zones are going to have different capital needs and different expenses from an operating perspective, and it may or may not be a fair or rational assumption relative to the revenues supporting the activities in that zone. I mean, we want them to, but that may or may not be a realistic expectation. For example, zone, the park zone is 3.
Yeah, the public.
You know, name a park that pays for itself in the city.
Well,
and so
so
what I'm getting at is that while it may assist us with capital improvements, it may assist us from a programmatic standpoint. I think that our expectations need to be really, very realistic in terms of what we anticipate is going to happen in each of the zones. And I guess that's my only caution is
I'm not asking for a fund for that one yet for that very reason.
Well, and quite frankly, that's the point of this analysis, is to really hone down and figure out what is making me money, what is not. What is making money to cover its own expenses and what's not. And what is a public benefit that the entire community is taking is benefiting from, and maybe the entire community needs to figure out a way to pay for that benefit. And then we look at who is gaining that benefit beyond just our community. A lot of people from outside of Des Moines come down, as we have found out with our parking study, to take advantage of the marina. So we need to think about that as well.
And all these models will be an inherent part of the budget process. This is what I use to help run the budget conversations.
Can't we do all of that you just said without creating funds?
The only fund that I'm asking for at this point, or the only thing that I see out of this right now, would be the Redondo. The rest is yes. I'm not asking or even suggesting that the economic development zone get a fund at this point. The whole 1, 2, 3 thing is all too commingled at this point to get to that level. The only one that seems to stick out and be self-contained might be the Redondo one.
Right,
So,
but councilmatically, we create a fund, and then we get to the end of the year, and then councilmatically, we have to reappropriate the funds.
Well, you'll do that every year as part of a budgeting process.
Right, but it just seems like another step when we can get a year to get some information together and then come back with it. Am I misunderstanding?
And it's possible that we may not create this particular fund by the end of this year. We need to do a little bit more work and analysis. The Marina Fund already exists. The General Fund already exists. I don't see a need to create a special fund for the economic development area or the public benefit area, because quite frankly, both of those fall into the general fund type responsibilities and activities. And then we have the Marine Operations Fund, or area that already has its own fund. So, at best, one more fund, and we'll approach that cautiously.
Okay. Well, thank you, yeah. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Third.
2.5 minutes, the meeting's done.
Yeah. Our next council meeting is going to be next Thursday, the 21st. We have a draft resolution regarding city facility rental fees, and we're done the parking study update. And the Port of Seattle Sustainable Airport Master Plan, we're going to get a briefing from the port. All those in favor of adjournment, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Next council meeting next week. Thank you very much.